Dory. Hello, it is May 2022 and this is a presentation to explain how I've been trying to integrate the Apple macOS environment and my existing Microsoft server-based workstation environment into one high-performance environment with only one set of screens, one keyboard and one mouse. I'd address this presentation to IT specialists and in so doing I'm kind of excluding noob macOS or Windows users. So as an IT specialist or as an IT enthusiast, I have frequent need to use both platforms, that being macOS, currently it's Monterey, which is version 12, and Microsoft Windows type systems. I've been a fan of Microsoft Windows Server for a long time, and whilst it's a kind of expensive solution, it is a very robust and reliable solution over the traditional Microsoft Windows environment. I have been using that for the last 4 years, more or less exclusively, with the odd dabble into macOS as required. Now I'll make probably reference throughout the whole of this presentation to the fact that in the olden days it was possible to run an Intel workstation as your primary workstation, and the Intel workstation using virtualization could run a lot of things. It could even run 16-bit and 32-bit legacy operating systems like IBM's OS2, or in my case Krememco's Chromix operating system, the 8-bit version, or the Motorola 68000 version. So all that was possible under an Intel workstation, and you could also, if you had the right know-how, emulate macOS under the Intel workstation VMware. So whilst that performance wasn't anything to shout about, it was just about usable. But all that has changed. I don't think it changed because Apple wanted to exclude the enthusiast community, but they certainly have done so as a result of their movement to Apple Silicon or M1. Because the new systems, the new Apple Silicon systems, are extremely resilient to emulation on any other platform other than Apple Silicon itself. And hence, well, over the last 6 to 12 months, the enthusiast community has been basically decimated. And once Apple stops supporting its latest operating systems on an Intel platform, which is coming soon, the whole of the Intel-based Hackintosh or Mac emulation or enthusiast or those kind of words communities will just be wiped out, because there'll be no way to emulate the current generation of macOS under Intel. Anyway, let's proceed, and I'm trying to anticipate all of this. I'm a frequent user of both operating systems, be it for education purposes, be it for entertainment purposes, be it for a number of reasons. So I am now the person who's seen the writing on the wall and has realized that it's necessary to have a genuine physical Apple Silicon system and my existing rather large Intel based workstation with literally tens of processors, gigabytes of memory, terabytes of solid state storage disk. So how do I mesh those two environments together? Well, on the screen you will see the current solution, and this is Mac centric. And I say that with a bit of regret in my voice, because I still maintain that the Mac GUI I call it the awful, outdated Mac GUI, just to make you understand where I'm coming from, is a very poor substitute for the Windows desktop. Essentially, it's not as sharp. It relies on you being able to have to use the mouse, and there are often no keyboard equivalents in the Apple world. And the graphics and the visuals are just not as sharp as in the Windows environment. There are so many cases where it's possible to do something with the keyboard in the Windows environment, and that just doesn't happen under Mac OS. Anyway, let's proceed with the drawing and see what I've done, and see what we can do to have a sort of a homogenized environment. So we've got a Mac Mini here, physical Mac Mini, and out the back we've got the HDMI connection feeding the first 4K monitor. I used to have 3 4K monitors, but now I'm down to 2 because the Mac Mini doesn't support it. My Intel workstation can support at least 5 screens, 5 4K screens, but I'm down to 2 screens now. So the Mac Mini's second screen comes out of the USB-C port via a very inexpensive, something like a £10 or £20 Amazon converter, driving a second monitor, 4K monitor. So according to my specs, this second monitor can be driven at 60 frames per second, although I'm not a gamer, so all of this is pretty irrelevant. Now, in the old setup, where the Microsoft environment here was the primary focus, all my peripherals were connected to the Intel workstation, but I've had to rework everything in the following way. So we have the Mac Mini, and from a USB 3 port is the high quality studio microphone. Then we've got a USB-C connection, which is driving the Logitech 4K webcam. And finally, there's one port left over to drive a USB 3 Type A large socket. So this Mac Mini is sitting under the desk, nowhere near my field of view, but it's connected to all of these different peripherals. And via a Logitech Bluetooth keyboard, it's an MX keyboard, I'm able to actually control the Mac Mini or the Intel workstation. In the accompanying article, I'll put some links to the gear that's used to save you the trouble of looking it all up. Also, I've got this wonderful silent mouse which I can click, and yeah, you can't hear very much because it's a silent mouse. What a wonderful product. So the general idea then is that you start off on the Mac Mini and you can jump into the Intel workstation as required. Now on the this is a secure environment, so my Intel workstation runs purely on the LAN. There is no Wi-Fi. So out of the back of the Ethernet socket on the Mac Mini, it joins the secure part of our LAN, and then via one or more firewalls. Obviously there's a firewall on every machine itself, but there's a separate firewall that then goes to lesser networks in our home, and I'm omitting many things, security devices, but eventually we end up at the boundary level firewall and then the internet. So this is an equally secure configuration to the old Intel configuration, because the Intel configuration again didn't have Wi-Fi, it was only wired LAN. But the Intel configuration again had a Bluetooth keyboard and a silent mouse. So a note to everyone, which is that of course Microsoft Windows Workstation fully supports Bluetooth, but Microsoft Windows Server had not supported Bluetooth. It certainly does now under 2019 server and 2022 server. It does support Bluetooth, so you shouldn't have any difficulty in connecting a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, and indeed I do so via a dongle plugged into a USB 3 socket, since my motherboard doesn't have Bluetooth. It's a server motherboard, and it doesn't have Bluetooth normally. So where are we? We start the Mac Mini. Mac OS Monterey version 12 starts up. It's driving two 4K screens, and when I want to switch the workstation on, it's actually controlled by the Alexa device, and we can then switch the workstation on using voice command, and it'll 5 minutes later power up. So one of the advantages of the Mac Mini, despite my terrible criticism of its user interface, is the fact it can suspend and resume, and my workstation server environment could not do that. So it was a 5-minute boot and something like a 1-minute shutdown. But that meant to say that once that system was on, it was on the whole day. And now I have the option to just keep the Mac Mini on or suspend it and use less than, it's around 10 watts of power whilst that system is suspended. So it's extremely advantageous in terms of power efficiency, this new environment, because on a day when I don't need to work with virtualization, which is the principal thing running on this Intel device still, I can just keep the Mac Mini on its own. So how do I access the workstation? Well, assuming it's booted, it doesn't even need to be logged in. I can just run what I would call, well, it is called Microsoft Remote Desktop. So that's a free product available from the Apple App Store. And as you see here, I've configured two machines. So this is the server itself, and this is a virtual machine that runs inside that main system. So I'm just done two as an example. I could put another sort of 10 different virtual machines here. So for example, my old vintage computer systems, etc. So that's how it's accessed. Now you might say the question is, well, I'm not happy to do that. I want to do it the other way around. Couldn't you have done it that way around instead? And the answer is yes, you still can do it that way around. And you do it in the following way. You'd connect your Bluetooth keyboard to here, your mouse to here. So in fact, I can still boot this up. I can just reconfigure the screens. So I can just use the remote controls to change the screens to point to this Intel workstation, power this Intel workstation on, change the Logitech Bluetooth MX keyboard, which can speak to 3 different hosts. So I've got my laptop, my Mac OS system, and I've got my Windows Server system on those 3 hosts. And for this silent mouse, I've got my Mac Mini system, I've got my workstation system, and then via 2 different Bluetooth connections of this silent mouse. And the third is the laptop that's connected via a dongle. So going back to what I was talking about, the other way of connecting these systems would be to have the Intel workstation as your primary. That would boot up as normal, and this workstation's about 5 years old now. So just the same way as I'd always run the workstation for the last 5 years, I'd need to connect all of these peripheral devices as well, and principally the webcam and the USB microphone would need to be back connected to the Intel workstation. And then when I wanted to jump into the Mac Mini, I would use something, I've done the research by the way, best free product I've found is what's called Splashtop Streamer. So using Splashtop Streamer, there's a client that sits on the Microsoft end, and you run that client and you give Splashtop Streamer. You give Splashtop Streamer the right authentications and privileges on your Mac system, and then you're able to jump right into that Mac, and you can bring back the audio and the video, and it's quick enough to run YouTube, but just about. It's not like 4K quick enough without sort of stuttering a little. And that's on a 1 gigabit LAN. So I've tested that other way of doing things, which is, I could have left it as it was. So in other words, in the olden days, or until recently, the webcam and the mic were connected to my Intel workstation. and then I could run the Splashtop. I could start both systems up, and then I could get through to the Mac Mini using Splashtop Streamer. But I lose the advantage of the suspend resume capability of this Mac Mini, and the fact that it is advantageous to have what I call a client operating system running, because it allows me to do a lot more things than I could do with the Microsoft Server system. So you might remember the fact that Kludges accepted there was no way to get Microsoft on the Microsoft Server platform. There is no App Store, and quite a lot of applications now are only distributed via the App Store, and in particular the WSL Linux emulation is still at WSL version 1, not version 2, which is extremely irritating. So there are drawbacks to running the Windows Server platform as your daily driver, and there's absolutely no chance of this being able to suspend and resume. So the advantage of switching everything to my primary workstation of the Mac Mini is it is able to power and resume. There's all sorts of extra apps that I can now run on here. For example, I can run the Messages app so that my SMS messages are shown on the macOS screen. I can run the FaceTime app, so my army of friends who are so selfish or unable to use anything but FaceTime to talk to me, they're not prepared to use things like Signal or Zoom. They have to insist on using FaceTime. So now I can communicate with these people because I can run FaceTime natively. And in other respects, it is a delight to use the Mac Mini. Again, many of these facilities would be available on a Microsoft Windows platform as opposed to Windows Server platform, which I have been running. So that's it. I'm in week 3, I would say, of the evaluation. I've got just about everything I want set up on the Mac Mini. There are many things that you can get working on the Mac Mini Silicon version. I would point users in the direction of the Brew package. There's the Brew package. I was trying to install a package that didn't exist, unfortunately, but that's Logitech camera settings, but it's not available. So Brew is a package manager that runs under macOS Unix, and it adds various facilities to your system. And secondly, there's the Wine system. Let me just try and get everyone excited, or systems people excited. Where's my applications folder? System, and we'll start something up, which I hope will excite many of us. Yes, I have Putty running. So again, this is running M1 Silicon, but it now runs Wine version 7.0, and using Wine 7.0 you can run any Windows 64-bit program. So programs I don't choose to want to use, I can take the time and trouble to use a Wine version. So that's a 64-bit Windows executable running quite fine on the Apple M1 Silicon. And I would also like to show you that I've got, I won't show you too much here, but I've got Winbox running on my M1 Silicon system as well. So it's possible to get all sorts of things running on the system if you know how. So that's it really. Mac Mini is now the system I get up to in the morning. I power it on. I power I can power on via Alexa commands these screens, and it is the focal point of my computer experience.
And I think this is a very good way to work. It gets you into using all the Mac low-level commands at the Unix command line, albeit they're very, very rudimentary compared to a modern Linux system. But they're still there, and they're even decades behind, or they feel like decades behind, the WSL implementation under, in other words, the Linux implementation under Microsoft Server. But nevertheless, it's better than nothing, and it does get you back into the Mac OS command line and the Mac OS facilities provided by things like System Preferences, which in the past I've only used in passing, and now I'm using it every day, so I'm becoming much more of an expert in that. Okay, Dari, that's how it's all working so far. There'll be some more videos and a companion article with some example products that are working in this environment for you to pursue. Thanks for watching.